Zuri had stayed quiet for too long. Her sister Lami was gone, and someone had to answer for it. She was done crying. It was time to fight back, not with shouting, but with a plan. A smart, quiet plan to destroy everything inside Jabari's mansion, every lie, every secret, every person who hurt her. She was going to bring them all down. The garden was quiet. Rose petals lined the path, expensive chairs, gold-rimmed plates, slow music. Everything looked perfect. It was Jabari's father's memorial anniversary. The Adeyemi mansion was full of powerful guests, senators, CEOs, judges. His mother had planned every detail to honor her late husband and to remind everyone that the Adeyemi legacy was still strong. Then she walked in. Zuri, in a soft, simple cream dress, no makeup, no jewelry, just her, standing under the sun with calm eyes and quiet steps. Every head turned. The crowd went still. Even the birds seemed to pause. Jabari froze mid-conversation. His breath caught. Then he moved, fast. He reached her before anyone else could. "Zuri," he whispered, like saying her name would make her vanish again. Zuri looked up at him. Her voice was soft. "I want to give us, one more chance." Jabari's heart jumped. "But not everything," she added quickly. "I'll move in. Be your fiancé, not your wife, not yet. We take it slow." He nodded too fast. "Anything, whatever you want." From across the garden, Mrs. Adeyemi watched. She smiled politely, but her hand shook as she lifted her wineglass. The red liquid trembled. She gripped harder. Behind her smile, her jaw clenched. Zuri greeted the guests one by one. She kept her voice low, her shoulders lowered. She looked like a girl trying to fit in. Everyone assumed she had forgiven, that love had won, that poor little Zuri had finally found peace. But no one saw her eyes, not the guests, not Jabari. Only the sky above could see the truth, because in Zuri's eyes, there was no love, no joy, no hope, only fire, silent, controlled, waiting. As Jabari introduced her to a senator's wife, Zuri smiled sweetly. Then her gaze shifted, straight to Mrs. Adeyemi. The older woman was watching her too, their eyes locked, just for a second. And in that second, a war was declared. Mrs. Adeyemi raised her glass and nodded slowly. Zuri smiled right back. But it wasn't warm. It was the smile of a woman who had returned to the house not to be loved, but to finish something. Later that evening, Jabari walked her to the guest room, prepared for her. "You sure you want to stay here tonight?" he asked. Zuri nodded. "Yes. I want to get used to this place. Slowly." He touched her hand. "Thank you for coming back." She looked at him. "I had to," she whispered. But deep inside, Zuri already knew the truth. She hadn't come back for love. She came back to bury what was left of it. And this time, she would dig the grave herself. The next morning, Zuri woke up early, before anyone else in the house. She tied her scarf neatly, wore a plain ironed dress, slipped on her old sandals. Then she went to the kitchen. The maid stared as she began setting breakfast trays herself. "Miss Zuri, that's not your job," one whispered. "I know," she smiled softly, "but I want to help." She arranged cutlery, folded napkins, polished every spoon, even wiped down the dining chairs. The staff watched, confused. Zuri didn't care. This was part of the plan. In the garden, she bent low with the gardeners, helping prune the roses. Her hands got scratched. She didn't flinch. Later, she carried tea to Mrs. Adeyemi's room herself. "Good morning, Ma," she said gently. Hope you slept well." Mrs. Adeyemi raised her brow, took the cup without a word. Then slowly she smiled. "A good fiancé serves her family," she said. Zuri bowed her head. "Yes, Ma. But..." Behind her lowered lashes, her thoughts were sharp. "Keep smiling, old woman. Your time is ticking." That night, Jabari and Zuri sat on the balcony. He looked at her like she was sunlight. "You're different," he said. "Calmer, stronger." Zuri stayed silent. He continued, voice low. "You know, I never believed in love before you." She turned her head slowly. "My mother raised me to be cold, controlled. I was never allowed to feel." He paused. "She said emotions are a weakness, that love makes men stupid." Zuri's lips parted, but she said nothing. Jabari looked down. "Sometimes I wonder if she ever loved my father at all." Zuri's fingers curled in her lap. She made a small note in her mind. Another wound, another crack. That night, after everyone was asleep, Zuri crept into the prayer room. She slipped a tiny recorder behind the bookshelf, hidden, unseen. Then she went back to her room and pulled out a small leather-bound notebook. She began writing. Day 3. Mrs. Adeyemi yelled at maid over juice tray. Through glass. No apology. Jabari mentioned fear of emotions, controlled since childhood. She flipped to the next page. Plans. Timelines. The truth was no longer enough. She wanted evidence. Real proof. The kind that burned down names. The next afternoon, Jabari handed her a heavy brass key. "This was my father's study. No one goes in there anymore." Zuri looked at it. "You want me to use his office?" she asked. He smiled. "Turn it into your library. You deserve peace." She touched the key gently. But in her mind, she wasn't hearing library. She was hearing vault. And she knew exactly what to do next. Because behind those locked doors lay the one thing she still needed, the past. And Zuri was ready to open it. Days passed. Zuri kept doing her chores, kept smiling, kept serving. But only when Jabari was around. The moment his car left the gate, the air in the house changed. Cold, sharp, cruel. Mrs. Adeyemi no longer bothered to pretend. She stood in the hallway one morning, arms folded, watching Zuri mop the floor. "You're doing all this to impress him?" she asked. Zuri didn't reply. Mrs. Adeyemi stepped closer. "Don't forget who you are." Zuri stayed silent. "You were born to clean. That's your place." Zuri looked up slowly. "I'm not trying to impress anyone, Ma." Mrs. Adeyemi laughed. "Then don't think the ring means anything. You can wear diamonds, but you'll still smell like poverty." That night, Zuri's nurse didn't come. When she asked, the head maid whispered, "Ma said she's not needed anymore." Zuri nodded. The next morning, her breakfast tray was missing. She walked to the kitchen. The cooks looked away. "We were told not to serve you," one muttered. "I understand," Zuri said calmly. She boiled her own water, made her own tea, sat alone in the corner of the garden. Not once did she complain, but every time it happened, she wrote it down, in her notebook. One day, while dusting the prayer room, she caught Mrs. Adeyemi whispering to a visiting auntie. "Zuri thinks this is a fairy tale. Let her enjoy it. She'll be gone soon." The auntie laughed. "You'll throw her out again?" Mrs. Adeyemi smirked. "This time, I'll bury her so deep, she won't crawl back." That night, Zuri didn't sleep. She replayed those words in her head, over and over. By morning, her eyes were no longer tired. They were clear, focused, dead calm. Later that week, while Jabari was out meeting investors, Zuri passed by the sitting room. Mrs. Adeyemi called out, "Come here." Zuri stepped in. "Fix the curtain," she said coldly. "It's crooked." Zuri walked over and adjusted the cloth. As she turned back around, a sharp sting slapped her across the face. Hard. The room went silent. Zuri stood frozen, the slap still burning her cheek. But she didn't cry. She didn't shout. She just looked into Mrs. Adeyemi's eyes, full of shock that Zuri hadn't collapsed. Zuri leaned in. Her voice was a whisper. "One day, you'll wish I stayed silent." Then she turned around and walked away, calm, in control, already winning. Because Zuri wasn't here for comfort anymore. She was here for truth, and truth was about to scream. The study was quiet. Dust floated in the sunlight. The air smelled of old paper and wood polish. Zuri stepped inside, holding the heavy brass key Jabari had given her. She closed the door, behind her, locked it. This room had once belonged to Jabari's father. No one went in here anymore. Zuri moved slowly, touching the shelves, the desk, the cracked leather chair. She could feel memories inside the walls. Memories that had been buried. But she wasn't here to remember. She was here to uncover. In the corner, half hidden under old files, she spotted a worn-out wooden box. She pulled it out, sat on the floor and opened it. Inside were letters, documents, a faded journal, and a folder marked Private. Adeyemi family. Zuri's fingers trembled as she turned the first page. It was a letter, handwritten. "To my son, Jabari." She kept reading. "If you're reading this, it means I never got to tell you what your mother did. I tried, but she always found a way to stop me. My health started failing the moment I asked for a divorce. I knew it wasn't natural. My medicine tasted strange. My chest would tighten after every meal. The doctors called it stress, but I knew it was her." Zuri's breath hitched. The next pages were medical records, signed prescriptions, hospital visits, notes from private doctors, then another journal entry. "She said emotions make men weak. She didn't want you to feel, only to succeed. But I wanted you to grow soft where I was hard. I wanted you to feel joy, Jabari. Real joy." She hated that. Zuri covered her mouth with her hand. This wasn't just manipulation. It was slow destruction. She slipped the papers into her bag. Quiet, careful. Then something else caught her eye. A small envelope, yellowed with age. Inside was a photo. Jabari, younger, smiling, standing next to a girl. They looked happy, really happy. Zuri turned the photo around. On the back, in messy handwriting. "She left after Mother threatened her. I still don't know what she said." Zuri's eyes widened. This had happened before. She wasn't the first woman this family tried to erase. She was just the first to survive it. She placed everything into a plastic folder and zipped it shut. Then she reached for her notebook. Day 7. Found evidence. Proof of poisoning, manipulation, lies, family pattern. She paused, then added one more line. "It ends with me." Outside the study, she could hear laughter from the garden. Jabari was home. Zuri stood up, took one last look at the room. Her voice was a whisper now. "Your father tried to protect you. And now, so will I. But not with silence." She walked out of the room, calm, steady, unstoppable. The truth was no longer hidden. It was in her hands. And she knew exactly when to drop the bomb. The dining room shimmered with golden light. Fresh flowers stood tall on the table. Expensive plates, shining silverware, and fine wine lined every place setting. House staff moved quietly, refilling glasses and placing dishes. It was Zuri's idea. A small engagement celebration. only close family. Mrs. Adeyemi had approved it quickly, proudly, assuming it was Zuri's way of showing gratitude. But tonight, Zuri wasn't serving food. She was serving truth. Jabari sat at the head of the table, his mother on one side, Zuri on the other, aunts, uncles, cousins, all talking, laughing. Zuri smiled gently, passing dishes, nodding politely. Her hair was tied back. Her dress was simple and soft. She looked like a picture of peace. Then she stood up. Everyone went quiet. "I just want to say thank you," she began sweetly, "for welcoming me, for accepting me, for giving me a second chance." Mrs. Adeyemi raised her glass, fake smile wide. "To the future." Zuri nodded. "Yes, the future, but first, the past." She pulled a small remote from her pocket, pressed play. A hidden TV screen rolled down from behind the curtains. Everyone turned. A video started playing. The room filled with the sharp voice of Mrs. Adeyemi. "You can wear diamonds, but you'll still smell like poverty. You'll be gone soon. Slap!" The sound of a hand striking flesh. "This house doesn't belong to you. It never will." Gasps echoed around the room. Mrs. Adeyemi's face drained of color. "Turn that off!" she barked. But Zuri's finger pressed another button. Now the screen went black, and a voice began to speak. Zuri's voice, calm, slow, heartbreaking, reading from Jabari's father's letter. "If you're reading this, it means I never got to tell you what your mother did. She poisoned my body, but worse, she poisoned your mind. I tried to raise you with softness. She turned it into stone." Jabari's hands began to shake. His spoon dropped. Everyone was frozen. Zuri turned to him, eyes steady. "This house didn't poison me," she said coldly. "It perfected me." She faced his mother now. "You didn't break me," she whispered. "You built the woman who's standing here exposing you." Mrs. Adeyemi stood up. "This is lies. He was sick. He was—" Zuri cut her off. "Stop. No more acting. No more pretending. You erased one woman, then tried to erase me. But I don't vanish." She turned to the family. "You all stood by while she tore people down. But tonight, you watched her truth in full color." Silence. Jabari stood slowly. His eyes were red. His mouth open, but no words came. He looked at his mother, then at Zuri, then at the floor. Zuri walked out of the dining room without another word. Not triumphant, just done. The sun had barely risen. The mansion was silent. Zuri folded her clothes slowly, one by one, into the small suitcase she brought when she first returned. No one else was awake. Not the maids, not the guards. Only Jabari. He stood by the door of her room, watching her pack. His eyes were swollen from a sleepless night. "Zuri," he whispered, stepping forward. She didn't stop folding. He tried again, voice cracking. "Please, we can start again." Zuri zipped the bag shut, then turned to him. Her eyes weren't angry. They were tired. "I loved you," she said softly. "I really did." Jabari stepped closer. "Then don't leave." "I believed in you," she continued, ignoring his plea. "I thought you were different. I thought you would protect me, that you'd see me." He shook his head. "I didn't know." She cut him off, voice sharper now. "No, you didn't know. And that's the problem." She placed the engagement ring on the bedside table, the same ring that once made her heart flutter. Now it felt like a stone. "This family," she said slowly, "killed the girl who wanted to stay. Jabari's breath caught. I lost my sister here. I lost my voice. I lost myself. And now... She looked around the room one last time. I'm not losing what's left of me. Tears welled in his eyes. Zuri, I'll fix everything. You can't fix what you let break, she whispered. The suitcase handle clicked open. Zuri took one step toward the door, then paused. She looked at Jabari. Really looked at him. Not with hate, not with love. Just finality. Some stories don't have happy endings, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. They just end with the truth. Then she walked, out of the room, down the stairs, past the silent dining room, through the grand hallway. The mansion's tall doors opened slowly. The morning light poured in. She didn't look back. Not once. She stepped outside and pulled the gate shut behind her with a quiet click. The guards didn't stop her. They just watched. Inside, Jabari stood frozen. The woman he had chased, the woman he had hurt, the woman who had returned just to show him who he truly was gone. He walked to the room where she'd slept, looked at the ring, then sat on the bed, the same one where her silence once lived. Outside the window, the wind blew through the garden trees, but inside the mansion there was only stillness and Jabari, alone, finally awake, but far too late. So, my besties, do you think Zuri made the right choice to expose Jabari's mother and take revenge for her sister's death? Or she should just stay quiet and marry Jabari? Comment below your thoughts because your voice really matters to us. Subscribe, and see you in the next video.